Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the RemitONE Webinar, The Future of Remittances, Emerging Trends and Strategies to Thrive in 2021. I'm Osama Kasevati, Associate Sales Director at RemitONE, and will be hosting today's event. Before we kick off and welcome our panelists, I'd like to briefly introduce RemitONE to our attendees here today. RemitONE has been servicing the remittance and banking industry for the last 20 years, and there are two main sort of sides to our business. The first part being the consultancy service. So we have specialist consultants on our team that could help our clients in a number of ways, including licensing throughout UK and Europe, whether that be the FCA or again throughout Europe for passporting and licensing. One of our consultants is actually a ex-FCA case officer, so we're quite well versed in the licensing process, whether that be a SPI license, API license, or an EMI license, e-money license. And we are able to take you through the licensing process to achieve those licensing. Also, on the consultancy side, we also assist with things like sort of pre-business launchpad, which will be things around developing a solid business plan, having an idea of the market, coming out with figures for projections, connecting some of our clients to other players in the market, so understanding the supply chain and how that work and how that would work. And again, we also help, as I mentioned, with the business plan itself, so the other consulting services, even post a license. And once you guys are up and running, we can also offer through our consultants ongoing AML training, anti-money laundering and compliance training for yourself and for your staff to ensure that your business is running in the correct manner and up to the standard that the regulatory body requires you to operate. So that's one side of our sort of services, and then we have the main part, the main body of our services, which is the systems or the software side, which again we've been developing over the last sort of 17, 18 years. And in terms of software itself, we offer a range of services in terms of software to a range of clients. Again, our clients range right the way up from large banks like United Bank of Africa use our core system, to Banco do Brazil, State Bank of Brazil, to Metro Bank Philippines, to large MTOs like Travelex is one of our clients who uses our system for their remittances. To again, as I mentioned, startups and an array of other clients. And just in terms of software itself, we offer them a variety of packages, whether that be, and this would depend on what they're looking for, whether that be a front-end white labeled online platform where their clients can log on, whether that be at home on a laptop or a tablet. They can log on, build a profile, and then start making payments using their services, or a mobile phone app, whether that be iOS or the Android, or the traditional agent-based model. And I think we will be speaking a bit more about those different interfaces as we have our discussions today. And apart from the front end user interfaces, obviously we offer the back end, which is the compliance manager, the award-winning compliance manager, Remtech. We won an award, I think, the year before last, for the strength of our international compliance manager, able to factor in your own rules and restrictions and controls into the system in terms of velocity checks, amounts, and things like that. Not only that, it has quite a large connection to the required sanctions and blacklists, a lot of them to meet the regulatory requirements like OFAC and DFAC, and again, it'll run those checks and reports. Following on from that, obviously, over the last sort of 17 years, we have been producing our software. We've been integrating, connecting either our partners or third parties through integration into our software, hence giving the ability of our clients to have a wide network or enter into other networks very quickly. So as an example, if our if someone's using the RemitONE system and they have a UK to Philippines corridor and they would like to expand to other parts, because we've already have them existing integrations and have them relationships, we can quickly introduce them to payout partners who can facilitate other parts of the world, payouts in other parts of the world, quickly expanding their network. So again, helping clients from the front end expand the type of services they are able to offer, and also on the payout side, expanding the type of network coverage they can offer to their clients as well. And I think if you go into this sort of next slide below that, you can see some of our connections as well. Okay. So we're now going to jump into our panel session. Just before we welcome our guests, I would just like to explain that there will be 10 minutes at the end for a Q&A session. During the event, please message your questions to us via the Q&A top of the screen, and we'll go through these at the end. First off, I'm delighted to welcome Hugo Cuevas-Mohr, President and CEO of Moneo World Consulting. Hi, Hugo. How are you today?
Hi, thank you. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for joining us. Second panelist, we also have Nadeem Qureshi, CTO of USI Money. Hi, Nadeem. How are you?
Hello, everyone. I'm well, thank you. Pleasure.
Fantastic. Fantastic. It's really good to have you here today. Thanks for attending and joining us.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we also have Walter De Cruz, CEO of Moneo Solutions. Hey, Walter. Can you hear us?
I guess you're muted.
I see on mute.
Yes, you're in mute. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Hello, everyone. Hey, Nadeem, Hugo. Looking forward to it, Osama.
Brilliant, brilliant, fantastic. Hi, so it's really good to have you. Thanks for joining us today, Walter. So we're going to go through a series of questions now. I'm going to direct each question at one of our panelists, but of course, because it's a discussion, I'd like everyone to I'm sure everyone has their views, and feel free to jump in at any point. So again, the first question, starting off directed to Hugo. The World Bank predicts that the global remittances were set to decline by 20% as a direct result of the pandemic. In your point of view, are we at where we should be in terms of recovery? What are the shifts you have seen, and what do you think will stick in the long term?
Okay, so let's start this. You know, everything that we're going to say today are opinions. Is a lot of guesswork, of course. Everything that sometimes I think, you know, it's mostly because I also talk to people in the industry. So it is my perception of things. And yes, we at the beginning of the pandemic, the big drop that happened and that we have seen in the statistics was scary, and everybody thought that that was probably going to continue through the year of COVID. Became more and more complex, and more countries started feeling the effects of the impact. Things like the 2008-2009 crisis, although this one it's different. Resilience has been the name of the game, meaning that amazingly, migrants especially have kept on sending money home, even though they seem to be out of work. There's a lot of countries affected, especially with the migrants that are in industries where they are employed, like the cruise industry, with the Filipinos and the Indonesians, or hotels, or et cetera, et cetera. So yes, everybody, all the countries were impacted. I mean, we were amazed to see the recovery, you know, and that, you know, May, June, July, September, and it's we still need some data to really, you know, to see how is the last quarter or December. But even Philippines recover almost to the same level of 2019. Mexico was higher, Colombia. So we've seen a lot of recovery of money transfers, which is really amazing. Now, Yes, I was surprised. Yes, I think most of us were surprised. We can speculate the reasons why. We just, let's say that migrants kept on sending money home because probably their families were doing worse than they were doing in the sending countries. I mean, that's a logic, but what else can we say? There are more reasons probably, but I think that could stick. Recovery, it is where I thought it will be. I can't say COVID is still uncertain. I mean, I think that one of the problems that especially the West has had with all of this is that we were hoping for the best. We were hoping for a quick solution, and then things will get worse and worse. And we're still hopeful that we are going to have a 2021 where everything will be better, but it's still very uncertain. So I think that the money transfer industry is also uncertain, but looking at what happened in 2020 and thinking that the worst is behind us as an optimist, I do think that the recovery will continue on. Of course, we all know that digital companies have had a great year in 2020. Yes, yes, there's certainly from everything that I've talked to CEOs of those companies to things that are public from public companies, Western Union, et cetera, digital has been increasing a lot. But it is, where is that those customers coming from? That's always a debate. Most companies say there's new clients. We have had this debate in panels and roundtables. Are they coming from the cash agents moving to digital? Will they come back? Are there new clients? We don't know. It's all of that. We don't have enough data really to know exactly where those customers come from. Are we really shifting their behavior? Will they go back? That is just something that we can speculate. But what I'm amazed is to find out how much cash agents are using digital ways to serve their clients. Domestic money transfer apps are being used by those cash agents to serve their customers because they cannot reach them. One agent had told me that 60% of the money transfer they are doing as a cash agent, it's not a cash agent because they're doing it digitally, is doing through money transfer apps. So you see, it is not cash versus digital anymore. Now, who is the money transfer company that is going to use technology to help get those cash agents into digital world? We don't know. But it is the whole industry that is moving up, yes. So I cannot predict those shifts. I think everything is moving. It is moving in the same direction. And I'm going to stop it here just because I want to hear what Walter and Nadeem have to offer, because they're on the front lines. They more than me, who is analyst and a consultant, but I hear things really from a second hand.
Yeah, good to hear your thoughts, Nadeem. Have you seen a number of payments transactions going down in general over this sort of pandemic period? How has it been for yourself?
Okay, so first of all, regarding the World Bank study, I think that sort of covers just after the pandemic started. So we have 2020, 2021, and it's based on a global level. It's not based on any particular region. So obviously different regions have been affected in different ways. In terms of what we've gone through with the pandemic, look, the reality is every single sector, whatever that may be, has seen some form of decline. I feel, in short, countries which had large number of migrant workers, for example, employment, which has declined as a result of that, naturally would affect remittances. So in terms of the study, it is what it is. Are we in an industry which is resilient? Absolutely. I think in terms of the uptake going into early 2022, you will actually see that the cross-border payments will actually increase a lot faster than the other sectors. And a lot of declines is also on the side of the banks. By the way, it's not necessarily from the MTO level, because the cost of remittances, cross-border payments are actually a lot lower than obviously like compared to the banks. So with the banks, you have about 10%, for example, sometimes a cost of a couple of $100 transaction as compared to the MTOs. So we are seeing a shift. It is in decline, but there's specific reasons.
Nadeem, I just want to stop us there, because I think we've answered and covered that quite well, and it kind of goes into again what you were just about to go into. My next question, I want to actually direct this to yourself. So what are the key success strategies for 2021, and how will traditional agent-based actors react to this digital push? So success, interesting word. So success can be measured on different levels. You can have success for a small to medium-sized MTO. Could mean that he's gone from a standard cash over the counter model, and he's just pushed himself online, and we could classify or define that as success. And we will be seeing in 2021 a mass migration of traditional over-the-counter payments to more of an online digital push. If anything, we've learned that with the pandemic. In terms of medium to larger institutions, they have measured success based on their user growth. They've, for example, gone out and done another fundraising round. So they've measured, they've seen an uptake in the volume of transactions, whereas the small to medium size are just happy to go digital. One of the things we're seeing on an institutional level, however, is that the larger entities are also now downstreaming some of their activities. For example, they have access to payout networks, digital wallet accounts, and these types of facilities. So because they're growing very fast, they are looking at new ways of continuing to grow. And one of the target areas are those smaller MTOs, which are migrating into the, that digital place. So I think we're seeing a varied, how do I say, a set of elements. So whether that's the push to digital, or how do I say, or acquisition in terms of customers. And to Walter, do you yourself, do you see any particular strategies being deployed for succession, and do you see any shifts?
I think if you have a look at the overall, capital markets and the financial market, it's there's a lot of uncertainty. I think the growth of blockchain is continuing to explode, and I'm not talking just about Bitcoin, which is effectively a smart contract with one class of asset, right? I'm talking about blockchain being used by enterprise governments and other financial institutions to seamlessly manage the exchange of value with a foundation of digital trust, right? So I see that as an impact that's going to happen in the remittance world. And I also believe that the fluctuation in terms of the fiat currency markets, the uncertainty, the fact that there's more increasing pressure on MTOs to be more transparent in terms of fees, what FX rates and so on. And if you look at the financial markets in general, certainly in banks, you look at where they make their money, and it's in treasury, not in the retail, the front end, right? And that's where the problem is, right? MTOs manage the front end.
So this is quite interesting, Walter. So this is the first time sort of hearing all this sort of thing. So what you're saying, as a direct result of the pandemic, because some of the fiat currencies are going to have more volatility, people are going to seek safe havens in cryptos. Is that what you're saying?
They're really doing that now. I mean, the financial institutions are doing it. This is mainstream capital markets that has really fueled the growth in part of BTC, right? Of Bitcoin. But it's not just that, it's the adoption of, say, blockchain by JP Morgan, right? And so on. That's the sort of things that are happening. And I think it's inevitable that in the money transfer world, that blockchain be adopted to create a class of a token which can have multiple classes of assets associated with it. So you can create smart contracts, right? So you can have fiat, gold. It could be simply a utility token, right? To agree a value to transfer. And I think that's where I think the growth will be, certainly in terms of the big e-commerce players, because they'll be looking to reduce costs, right? And also increase compliance and transparency. And that's where I see the big innovations, and the winners will be the ones that adopting that approach. I think from the like of RemitONE, Osama, I think that's the overall, in terms of your ecosystem, because, you know, with any sort of asset where you're exchanging value, you need to have all the participants operating and completely aligned, right? Whether it's a value. And the thing is, you don't have that right now in the global economies. We simply don't. And I don't know whether you're agreeing or disagreeing with me here, Hugo, but I think you'll find I'm right here. We need alignment. And I also read recently, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nadeem, that the growth of micro transfers looking forward is increasing. So more frequent transfers from the sender to the receiver, smaller value. That's where I've seen some really strong data that would suggest that is happening, especially in the pandemic, where people's money isn't lasting a whole month, right? So they call up and say, we need more money. And if you've got a fixed level of fee, it's pretty difficult to sort of get into that growth. And I think that's the challenge of MTOs, to get those fees and that level of transparency down to address that growth market. That is the growth market, I think, anyway. And I think blockchain will help.
Excellent. Well, thanks for your views there. Thanks for that, Walter. We're going to go on to sort of compliance and the regulation aspects of it. And again, I'm going to start off with Hugo again this time. And Hugo, I just wanted to ask you, in terms of de-risking, will we see a change in the bank's attitudes and habits in 2020, 2021? And what about the other challenger banks out there?
So let me round up a little bit of what Walter and Nadeem said in the success, because I agree with the outlook that we see. I mean, I think we're in agreement. But the success is yes, digital, but it's also internal, in the sense that companies are doing internally to lower costs, and it's amazing the partnerships that are growing from this. I mean, any company, the traditional or new fintech, it's integrating a lot of companies, like RemitONE with their system, integrating with players that can bring compliance, just faster ways of doing things. So it's like partnerships on steroids. I said it is amazing. As a consultant, I'm becoming more of a system integrator. Hugo, what do you think about this? What do we need? Well, there's this fintech that does this, that does that. It's amazing what is happening there. And with what Walter was saying about blockchain and cryptocurrencies, I used the metaphor about a couple of years ago, like we are facing two tsunamis. The first tsunami is like the digital one. And on the back of that is the blockchain and crypto tsunami that sometimes it's just the perspective that we're looking at. But yes, those two are coming forward. Now, it also affects the risking part with banks. The risking is still a problem. It's worse in some countries than others. Then I know challenger banks are becoming a solution. Yes, integrated with fintechs, integrated with a solution that not only is banking but has maybe compliance or fraud integrated into the solution. These digital banks are coming out. So the position of banks as integrators of other services is maybe making it easier for some banks to manage risk better. Still, we are not seeing it from the big banks, but they have their own, let's say, crisis. So this industry has to rely on this new solution, this partnership between these new banks and the fintechs to try to give us solutions for where are you? You're facing the customer. This in the United States, I've seen this challenger banks doing better. It's getting seemingly a little bit easier. Europe is still challenging. There's some markets in Europe where it's almost impossible to get a bank account, really. And then because of passporting, maybe you can get it in another country, and then you have people.
Are there solutions out there, though, Hugo, for that sort of thing? Are there companies offering sort of like an aggregator service where they handle the bank account side, they handle the licensing side, and maybe open up the market for others out there, sort of a more quicker way to market? Is there something like that out there at the moment?
Yes, and they're coming, and also. Remittance as a service, payment as a service, they're coming, some of them with the bank on the back, some of them don't, but I do think that that's one of the biggest growth in this is this partnering and is this solution coming, some of them with the bank on the back of it, so we have access to the banking rails. So for me, I think that COVID also has pushed this forward. So I'm an optimist in that sense because it's a silver lining in that we're just trying to work together to create solutions. It's really amazing. I don't think I have a whole perspective, but as more companies reach out and I look at them and we hear news and we read and every day I find another company, another fintech, another idea coming forward, and I say, my goodness, I mean, creativity is really pushing this industry forward. I'm really amazed. That's my 2 cents here.
So I just want to recap a little bit. Even though the pandemic's happened, obviously the banks got their own crisis. You don't think they're going to change their attitude towards money transfer operators, of course, because of de-risking. A medium-sized company, maybe when they do get fined, they get fined tens of millions, $250,000. But obviously some of these large banks, I think HSBC last time was 1.2 billion. So they don't see it's worth the risk. I don't know what we're talking about de-risking here. So it's very, very difficult in the industry for MTOs to actually approach the top 5 banks or high street banks for those MTO accounts. It's a simple no. So it's very, very difficult at the moment. There are some challenger banks coming out there, mid-tier banks, challenger banks trying to offer, specifically trying to cater and fill that space.
Can I just say, this is where blockchain can come in. And I think there are discussions at the central bank levels on this already and around the open banking standards, right? What you'll find is that one of the reasons why the big tier banks won't support MTOs is it's not just simply about you cutting their lunch, if you like, taking their business away. It's the risk of them supporting a business that might go pear-shaped is greater than the value they bring to the table. And the fact is, that's all down to the fact that there's a lack of transparency between the bank's compliance or uniformed rules and the financial institution or the MTO in this case. If you've got
Isn't that what PSD2 was about? It's supposed to be opening up the API documentation.
Yeah, but it has
But it never worked. They didn't open them up to us.
And the reason why is you've got inherently two separate platforms. That if you've got an acceptable blockchain, yeah, within the financial, and it doesn't have to be one type of token or one contract, you've got that ability to data interchange that data so that when you onboard a customer, the bank sees it and can actually know that the rules apply. So the risk is joint rather than on one party.
And it's more of a centralized system. That's
Well, no, in a way, you use it. It's still a peer-to-peer platform in terms of exchanging value, but in terms of the smart contract is the only mechanism to integrate the rules, the compliance rules between external and internal and over multiple jurisdictions for cross-border payment and remittance.
Yeah, and if I may just add to that, and Osama, your original question, in terms of bank attitudes from de-risking, it's not going to change. It will be getting worse. The cost and the risk in terms of the fines, the USD clearing facilities, etc., is just too great as compared to the benefits of having thousands of MTO accounts and being in that space. The challenger banks, which are entering the market, and we do see a large number of those, within Europe and the UK. It's not necessarily that they're going to solve the problem, because what they will be seeing is, as they enter into the market, they will have options of sort of picking the best apples, looking at potentially the larger clients who have established flows, etc. So again, I think in terms of the food chain, especially the smaller MTOs are the ones which, like Hugo mentioned earlier on, the partnerships. The best thing for them is to look at partnerships where you have a bigger aggregator who's able to support them, and that's the best thing that for them to be able to do, really, in terms of going forward. But in terms of banking, until what Walter was mentioning regarding blockchain is sort of implemented, and that could still take some time to mature, we will not see those smaller MTOs really benefiting.
Nadeem, could you just stay there, actually, because I'd like the next question to be directed at you and rolling on, actually. And this is about Brexit. What impact will Brexit have on the industry and the regulation?
So we've actually done the divorce. With Brexit has happened. Unfortunately, financial services, in terms of the broader elements, were not, in essence, finalized. There's still a lot of complications, just like it's been from day one. So they're hoping that a financial services deal will happen at some time in the future. What happened post 31st of December was that the MTOs that were sort of based within the UK have lost passporting rights. This has had a knock-on effect in terms of the MTOs that had accounts within Europe, and they were safeguarding their funds because they couldn't have, for example, banking partners within the UK, are now seeing that those accounts are being closed or fees are being hiked up. So in terms of the MTOs that were sort of relying on inter-European banking to have the safeguarding in place and to make sure that they were still operational, will see some sort of significant effect. And we are aware that notices, for example, have already been issued. But on the plus side, I would like to say that we're still part of the SEPA payment network, which is the Single European Payments Area. So the UK is still very much part of that. So that's a good news. However, the fees from the European banks are sort of being hiked up. And the UK is sort of finding itself, because the European payment regulator, which oversees the SEPA payment system, they're not really going to be fighting in the UK's corner, because obviously with all the Brexit element. So some banks have already started to hike up their SEPA payment fees and things like that. So it's had a big impact. We've lost, for example, European clients, and that's for the UK established MTOs, and vice versa within the European countries. MTOs that had any exposure within the UK have also lost that part of the business. So yeah, there has been quite a significant impact.
And what are your thoughts, Hugo? Because I know you're UK centric. I'm sure you've got some ideas about Brexit and what's happening at the moment, and how that will affect the industry.
Look, the bigger companies got their license in other European. They left UK and opened in other countries, and that happened, because they were preventing one. Of course, the smaller ones didn't, or were a little bit late. We've been helping some of them get licenses in parts of Europe, so it's been very interesting what European countries have done. Some of them have done nothing, but the Netherlands, I think Spain, have made an effort to attract and make it easier for these for companies to establish themselves in their jurisdictions. And I'm not talking about Lithuania, Estonia, Malta, Cyprus, etc., because those have, let's say, they're different, or they have the problems of their own. So yes, the impact is there. Yes, there's been some talks about mergers. There's partnerships going on for some of the small ones to be able to access some of their clients they are not being able to access. So yes, as Nadeem says, there's been a lot of changes, and every company is kind of managing their own problems. I don't foresee that there's going to be something very clear coming from the UK. It will be interesting to see what the UK does in order not to lose its standing. Maybe it will make rules easier. Maybe they will attract fintechs and new companies in order to stay relevant. We don't know. I try to see both sides of what will happen. We're still going to debate, but right now is company solutions, which I think the ones that I have spoke to have managed to do some. Some of them have lost markets in countries like Germany, and but it's still for me a little bit anecdotal. So that's just my feeling. That's what I can contribute to this discussion.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much for that. Very informative. I'm going to go on to my last one, and this is sort of a broad question. It's a technology question, and I'm going to direct this one at Walter first. He's our tech guy on our panelists today. And Walter, I want to sort of think a little bit even outside the box, if you wish.
I think Nadeem might have something to say about that.
Yeah.
What I'm interested in understanding a bit more about, what kind of things do you think we will see going forward in terms of sort of technology, user interfaces and things like that? And any cool things out there that people are chatting about? I know there's some facial recognition stuff going on for the Far East, where you can leave sort of selfies and leave videos and things like that. Well, not just at the front end, the back end, and the recognition side. What do you see sort of changes, sort of new cool tech stuff emerging as we go on?
I think this year won't be about deployment necessarily of new technology, because it's still recovering, right? A lot of businesses don't have the resources, not just the money, but the human resources available to sort of do a complete revamp. It's, in a way, it's about just trying to get through this, But I think where there will be improvements is I think Hugo mentioned this in clear terms, is this explosion of partnerships, especially in the fintech area, because fintechs don't have the resources to do all the things that need to do, whether it's compliance, risk, AML, customer service, and so on. And that
So,
goes,
so the big shifts, like you're saying, are not going to necessarily happen in the front end. They're going to more happen on the back end side with people, again, having more connections, trying to lower their costs and things like that. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I think that's going to be the case, broadly speaking. I think ecosystem, the concept of the RemitONE ecosystem, which is really massive. I think there are things to be done that can be done there to add value across the whole chain. But I think definitely it's about just getting through this and seeing where you can improve your margins, get better through better partnerships, because there are really good people, small fintechs that have got the right credentials and have the right solution for what you need, whether it be compliance or whatever, right? Or banking for that matter. Because, I think that was probably an area we didn't put enough emphasis on, is banking. It's still in the MTO world, not just here in the UK, but everywhere. It's really going to be more and more difficult, I think.
Yeah, I want to add, just reiterate that. I mean, there's a lot of changes internally. I expect more of these partnerships for internal reasons, lowering costs. And it's not only because the smaller companies cannot have access and the big ones can do is themselves, is that I need is a shift in mentality. Forget about doing everything yourself. Don't I mean, it's modular. Take this, take fraud here, take KYC. Look, this fintech can do it. It can do it even easier and cheaper than you can do it yourself, so use that. So it is this world of APIs and developments that are making, that is good for smaller companies because they can lower their costs, they can have access to these solutions. And there's so many of them, as I said. So I do think that technology is that, and yes, some of them will come from the blockchain world and some of them are coming from crypto, even in settlements. There are some corridors where you can use a crypto as a settlement, as a good settlement partner to get a better exchange rate, for example, or do it easier or faster, whatever. So I agree with Walter in saying that it's mostly a technology shift internal in companies trying to, okay, all right, I need to get more efficient. Let me do this, let me do that, rather than from the customer point of view. In the customer point of view, technology will probably integrate more services for migrants or for people transferring, bill payment will keep on increasing, and other maybe lending and other services that will be marketed together with the partnership with fintechs to the same client.
And just sorry to add to that, in terms of the e-digital compliance evolution, if I can say, when you have a sector where you have an astronomical amount of competition, it's always about the best user journey, who can provide the service the quickest. So digital footprints are starting to grow. Fintechs are challenging the regulators in terms of the explanation of certain rules, and they're pushing them to improve things. So nowadays you see some fintechs where it sort of corresponds with people's social media accounts, for example, or an iris biometrics scanning, or it's just literally a video to say, hi, I would like to open an account with you. And they're using that as a form of verification to onboard customers. And it's super efficient, it's super quick. And I want, I'm trying to say that people don't now want to keep on loading their documents and do the sort of standard checks.
Yep.
It's all about getting a client on board within a couple of minutes, creating transactions, getting it there in seconds rather than hours or next days, which is also where the blockchain element comes in. And as Walter mentioned, and Hugo also touched on this, I think that the atmosphere and the time is right for the smaller MTOs who don't have access to the infrastructure internally, and they've got the benefit of going for those modular approach. For example, take a RemitONE backend, go to this person for their compliance. We have plenty of merchant providers who are still in this space. It's not the same as with the banking providers, and literally they could set up shop, in a matter of weeks. So we are seeing a push. It's not just about the standard rigid system. We will be seeing people coming in, new fintechs coming on board, trying to challenge the way you register, trying to challenge the way that transactions are executed, albeit by blockchain or other methods. And we will continue to see that evolution.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I think that's a pretty comprehensive question. Thanks, guys, for your answers. I'm going to now, we're just going to go on to hopefully some of the question and answers section of our.
Usama, we have a question here about the uncertainties with the Nigeria market. How to tackle that question?
Right, I was going to leave that one till last. I actually haven't had another question.
I'm going to say something quick, Usama. I'm sorry for stepping in.
No, please.
I'm just going to say that I tell regulators all the time the same thing. The harder you make it, the more things go under the table. And same thing with remittances. Remittances are like water. You can put a dam, it will spill all over. They will reach where they have to reach. And Nigeria, the harder you make it formally, the more goes informally. So I'm sorry to say that. I like transparency. We want transparency because we want real figures. We want to know what is the volume, but sometimes regulations just hamper that. So what I'm going to say is that sorry to the formal companies in Nigeria who are trying to do the things the right way. But this is just fuels the informal market within Nigeria. It's always existed, and it's going to be hard to tackle because Nigerians are very creative people.
At the end of the day, we're talking about remittance as well. Money will still flow, as you just mentioned, regardless. So if you make it's like a dam, right, or like water. If you block it somewhere, it'll try to flow around another way because it has to reach that end destination. At the end of the day, people will always be sending money back home. How that gets there, it's your choice. Do you want it to go on the table, not regulate it and make it tougher, or do you want to at least have some sort of regulation and make it go through your channels, which is a little bit. In terms of system-wise, how can we help in terms of systems? RemitONE has built its system, so its compliance engine is very, very malleable. So you can choose your controls per region, per country, per amounts, per times, and things like that. Also, again, we can. It's the way we've built it is very easy for us to connect to sanctions lists or blacklists or anything like that, or any other central bank requirements that may be there. So that's how we can sort of help on the system side. I do have another question here from a Nigel Brigden, and he's saying that they've been affected by the pandemic because their target market audience is the Filipinos, sending money to the Philippines. Obviously, the two main industries they work in is the NHS and domestic help. And because of the lockdown, obviously, that's been reduced. What do we think and what can we do from that? It's following on, he also says that the other simple issue is that no one likes cash. It's very difficult for you guys to operate in cash, and obviously because of lockdown that might have also affected it a little bit more. So how the likes of companies RemitONE can assist in that sense, we can offer websites, and as I mentioned before, websites and mobile phone apps that have integration with payment gateways, credit or debit card payment gateways that we can introduce you to, the likes of WorldPay, Secure Trading. And I know you mentioned you're based in the UK, so these names might be familiar to you. And again, you can start accepting credit or debit card payments through them, and they will go straight into your bank account. If the bank account's the issue, again, you can. There are clients out there that can offer that solution where you can sort of piggyback off their license and their bank account. I think USI does sort of offer a similar sort of service like in the UK, and I believe Hugo himself as well has a solution of that nature in the US. This is a big, which are the new trend. I'm just trying to look at another question before we sort of try to wrap up here. I need to disagree with Nadeem because of the big aggregators, which are new trend. The last year's prices for sending only increases with small, medium NTOs. And the other side, digital companies pulling the price down. I can't understand how regulators allow those online MTOs to be losing companies. I ask who will finance these losses at the end, and they, the investors, digital companies anymore. So a little bit of a tricky one there. Nadeem, do you want to sort of respond to that? Are you seeing the?
Sorry, so if you can just repeat the
this is from
the fact that the regulator has not intervened.
From Yuval Tal. Are you able to click on the bottom? You see Q&A. We've got a little Q&A tab there. Nadeem, maybe you can pull that up and you can respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, I will look into that. But in terms of, I think Hugo mentioned it right at the beginning. Everyone has an opinion on the way we see things or we hear elements and feedback, and we discuss in panel discussions like this. Regulators are not responsible for, regulators create framework. Regulators do not define, for example, costs of remittances. Regulators are not there to pass on the blame. It's just to create a structure. That's normally where, for example, governments, etc., sort of intervene. In terms of the aggregators are have started now to sign up with smaller MTOs and offer specific products within the supply chain of transactions, for example, on a micro banking level. On a payout network, for example, or e-commerce, people are starting to be able to pick and choose, like Hugo mentioned earlier, those modules, and then grow. And I hope, because I have not seen the question, but I hope that sort of covers it.
Can I just add to that, Nadeem? You've mentioned about customer acquisition. There's a cost to it, right? To acquiring a new customer. There's also a cost to retaining that customer, right? And for these bigger MTOs and aggregators, it's important for them to ensure that they keep their customer acquisition costs down to a level. And how it impacts in terms of some of their maybe members or customers or channels is that they look at acquiring the customer through offering a fee that's lower than what the actual cost is, because they've got a suite of other products to sell to that customer. They've acquired the customer and they're pushing other products and services. So expanding, the MTOs expanding and maybe offering a white label banking service or something to add is important, because then you can, what they're basically doing is cross-subsidizing that customer with cheap rates, because acquiring that's down to the cost of customer acquisition. It's an old trick the mobile operators have been using for years, right? Acquire the customer by cross-subsidizing through other products, right? And if you look at TransferWise, they're doing exactly that.
Guys, just one last question before we do go, and of course, this everyone's really good question here. It's here we go. Where is it? Oh, that's simple. It's gone now. It's disappeared, so he's taken it off from the new game. Strange. Okay, we'll just take another one then. What remittance destinations are expected to rise in 2021?
For me, it's going to be Africa. I think Africa is a great, and that's I'm speaking on like from Europe out. I think that's one of the areas various governments are looking at. We have 50% plus of the emerging markets and the top 50 emerging markets based out of Africa. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure in terms of local regulations to improve things via the mobile monies, etc. But yeah, I definitely feel that's one of the big growth areas.
No, I've found that question out. I think it popped into another folder, which not everyone can see. So everyone can see this. What's your advice for a startup money remittance business with no prior experience in the business but the passion to succeed? Hugo.
I'm going to add to Nadeem answer about this destinations to succeed. I think there's going to be an increase in inter regional money transfers. I mean, the COVID is making people move, and maybe it's difficult to reach Europe or the United States or the Gulf states. So in Africa, in Latin America, in inside Asia, there's a lot of movement to new destinations. So I foresee an increase in this intra-regional remittances. I'm going to say that. Now, for our startup friend, this is a complex industry. I meet with people like that, and I tell them, look, it's very, very complex. You have to learn, read. You have to what is your sending destination? Where are you located? Where do you want to? What is your origination and your and what market do you want to don't expect to do everything unless there is, yes, remittance as a service solutions, etc. But just focus on what you want to do and learn about it. Read, participate in this webinars, understand the market, because it is not easy. It takes time, it takes money. And it takes a group approach to things. So yes, you can be a cash agent. Digital agents are starting to come by, and there'll be more solutions for that. But there's a lot of barriers to entry. Definitely there are. And as much as we love and we're passionate about this industry, and it is not an easy industry to get into. That's what I would say.
Agreed. Again, we are talking about in a lot of sense, it's not easy to get into. Obviously, that you have to understand the technology side, but also on the compliance side, it's not easy. There are lots of red tape. We are talking about a money service business here. It is probably the number one way people do like to launder money and finance terrorism and things like that. So you must know the regulation. I mean, I think that's sort of overarching theme and the backbone of it, of any remittance business, that know your compliance and understand that very well, because you could get into a lot of trouble. It's not just losing money. I mean, we're talking about jail time here, which of course I'm sure no one's interested in doing. But no, thank you so much for that, Hugo. Guys, we've come to the end of our webinar. I'd like to thank you all so much for joining us in your time today. It's been really, really interesting and informative, particularly for myself, and I'm sure for everyone else. So again, thank you so much for attending on